In 1985, Coca-Cola did something it had never done in 99 years of existence. It changed its formula. Not improved it, changed it completely. And the reason they did it was because of one thing. Pepsi was winning. Not slightly winning, Pepsi had pulled off the most shocking upset in the history of consumer brands, running a simple taste test in shopping malls across America that proved scientifically that people preferred Pepsi over Coke. The Pepsi challenge had single-handedly panicked the most powerful beverage company on Earth into making the worst decision in corporate history. New Coke launched on April 23, 1985. Within 77 days, Coca-Cola was forced to bring back the original formula in complete humiliation. It was the greatest brand war victory in history, and Pepsi threw it all away. This is the story of how Pepsi beat Coca-Cola and then made one catastrophic mistake that handed everything back. To understand this war, you need to understand how untouchable Coca-Cola was. In 1960, Coca-Cola controlled 61% of the entire American cola market. Pepsi had less than 20%. The gap was not a competition, it was a humiliation. Coca-Cola spent more money on advertising than Pepsi's entire revenue. They had better distribution, better shelf placement, better relationships with every restaurant, cinema, and fast food chain in America. The villain in this story was not just Coca-Cola, it was the psychology of inevitability, the feeling inside Pepsi's own boardroom that Coke was simply too big, too powerful, and too embedded in American culture to ever be beaten. Pepsi's own executives had accepted second place as permanent, until one man refused to. His name was John Scully, and the strategy he invented changed marketing forever. In 1974, John Scully, Pepsi's young marketing president, had a simple but radical idea. Stop trying to out-advertise Coca-Cola. Let the product speak instead. Pepsi set up tables in shopping malls across Dallas, Texas, and asked ordinary people to taste two unmarked cups of cola. Cup M, Cup Q. No branding, no logos, no context, just the drink. The results were shocking. More than half of participants preferred Cup M. Cup M was Pepsi. Scully had scientific proof that people actually preferred Pepsi's taste over Coca-Cola's. They just did not know it because the Coke brand had convinced them otherwise. He ran it as an advertisement. The country went insane. Coca-Cola executives publicly dismissed the Pepsi challenge as a gimmick. They called the methodology flawed. They insisted their customers were completely loyal. But behind closed doors, they were running their own blind taste tests and getting the same results. Within 3 years of the Pepsi challenge launching, Pepsi had closed the gap from 40 points behind to just a few percentage points. The most powerful brand in history was genuinely rattled. But here is the wait what moment that nobody talks about. The Pepsi challenge only tested a single sip. One sip of Pepsi tastes sweeter than one sip of Coke, which most people prefer in a blind test. But over a full can or bottle, the sweetness that makes Pepsi win in one sip becomes overwhelming. Pepsi had found a real advantage, but it was smaller than they thought. Coca-Cola was about to find out the hard way. By 1983, Coca-Cola's market share had fallen to less than 24% in some markets. Inside Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, panic had fully set in. CEO Roberto Goizueta made a decision that his own chemists, his own marketing team, and his own board members all privately warned him against. He reformulated Coca-Cola. On April 23, 1985, New Coke launched nationally. What happened next became one of the most studied disasters in business history. Americans did not just dislike New Coke, they were furious. 1,500 angry calls per day flooded Coca-Cola's customer hotline. A psychiatrist hired by Coca-Cola to listen to complaint calls told executives that some callers were grieving as if they had lost a close friend. Protest groups formed. Entire communities stockpiled cases of original Coke before it disappeared from shelves. A man in Seattle gathered 200 signatures demanding the original formula back. A man in San Antonio spent $1,500 buying every case of original Coke he could find and storing them in his garage. On July 10, 1985, Just 77 days after the launch of New Coke, Coca-Cola held a press conference. They were bringing back the original formula, called Coca-Cola Classic. Pepsi immediately took out full-page ads declaring victory. They gave their employees the day off to celebrate. It was the greatest competitive humiliation in corporate history. Pepsi had won the cola war, and then they made the one mistake that handed everything back. Here is what Pepsi did with the greatest victory in their history. Nothing. They celebrated, they ran ads, they enjoyed the moment. And then they got distracted. In 1983, John Scully, the genius who had invented the Pepsi Challenge and brought Pepsi to the edge of defeating Coca-Cola, left Pepsi to become the CEO of Apple. He took his competitive obsession with him. The new leadership at Pepsi decided that cola alone was not enough. They began diversifying. Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC. They bought all three fast food giants, believing that owning the restaurants that sold cola was a smarter strategy than fighting Coca-Cola for shelf space. They poured billions into snack foods, restaurants, and entertainment. Meanwhile, Coca-Cola did what wounded giants do. They focused. They rebuilt their distribution. They strengthened their relationships with McDonald's, Burger King, and every major fast food chain, the chains that Pepsi did not own. They launched aggressive international expansion, while Pepsi was distracted managing pizza ovens and taco shells. By the mid-1990s, the results were devastating. Coca-Cola's market share had recovered completely. Pepsi's share of the cola market was falling. In 1997, Pepsi finally admitted the restaurant strategy had failed and spun off Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and KFC into a separate company called Tricon Global Restaurants, now known as Yum Brands. They had spent a decade and billions of dollars building a fast food empire and then given it away. The war they had been winning in 1985 was now lost. Here is the number that tells the whole story. In 2024, Coca-Cola's market capitalization was $312 billion. Pepsi's was $240 billion. Coca-Cola outsells Pepsi in almost every country on Earth. In fountain drink sales, the drinks served at McDonald's, cinemas, and stadiums, Coca-Cola dominates almost completely because they locked up those contracts while Pepsi was running pizza restaurants. But here is the twist that most people miss. Pepsi, the company, PepsiCo, is actually larger than Coca-Cola in total revenue, because while Coke focused entirely on beverages, Pepsi built the world's second-largest food and snack empire, owning Lay's, Doritos, Quaker Oats, Gatorade, and dozens of other brands worth hundreds of billions combined. In beverages, Pepsi lost. In business, Pepsi survived, because they accidentally built something valuable while being distracted from their original war. The cola that had Coca-Cola running scared in 1985 is permanently in second place, but the company that makes it is still one of the most powerful consumer goods empires on Earth. Here is the lesson that every business on Earth needs to understand from this war. Winning a battle is not the same as winning the war. In 1985, Pepsi had Coca-Cola completely cornered. They had scientific proof of a superior product. They had public humiliation of their enemy. They had momentum, media coverage, and the single greatest marketing victory in history, and they looked away. The moment you stop focusing on beating your competitor to chase a bigger opportunity, your competitor recovers, rebuilds, and beats you while you are distracted. Coca-Cola did not win the cola war because they were better. They won because Pepsi forgot they were in a war. The Pepsi Challenge proved something in 1974 that is still true today. People's choices are shaped by what they believe, not just what they taste. Pepsi convinced America they tasted better, but Coca-Cola convinced America they were home, and home always wins. That is the untold story of the greatest brand war in history. Now, drop a comment below. Whose story do you want next on Untold Billionaires? The most requested name gets the next video. Your comment decides what we make next. Until next time.